Hi guys, today is Friday the 1st of February and I've actually got a snow day today because here just south of Bath where I live we actually had 6 inches of snow overnight, so I couldn't get to work, which is a complete pain because I don't get paid if I can't get in. But on the upside I've got a little bit of time to film some videos and the light is awesome. So today I'm going to film my wrap up for January, which is going to be a long one, and then also my TBR for Thriller-a-thon, which I've decided to take part in. So the Thriller-a-thon, that is hard to say, the Thriller-a-thon TBR video will be coming next week, but today is my wrap up for January. I did put a poll on my Bookstagram account, which is @WhatVictoriaRead, to ask if you guys want 2 small videos or 1 long one. And I got 100% vote for a long one, so get a cup of tea because I read 13 books in January, had such a good reading month, and this video is going to be a long one, so let's crack on. Right, the first book, honestly I've got them all laid out on my windowsill here because I've got a very professional filming setup, and I had such a good reading month. I've got like quite a few 5-star books in here for me and I am back in my reading group, which is so nice. But yeah, first book I read this month, I'm just going to try and get this out of the pile without knocking you over because you're on a stack of books as well. So the first book I read this month was a 5-star book. At the end of last year I read Circe by Madaline Miller, which was actually her second book, and as I'm sure you'll have seen if you saw those videos, I loved it. I've raved about it. It was in my favourite books of the year, and I just really adored it. So I was a little bit nervous to pick up her first book, which was Song of Achilles, because I'd really enjoyed Circe so much, and sometimes you can read a book by an author and love it and then you read another one and it's not good. This was really good. Like I said, this is her first book. It took her 10 years to write, which does give me a little bit, makes me feel a bit better because I used to be a writer. Can we just talk about all the dust that's floating around in this room? Great. Yes, so I'm going to talk about it at some point in the video, but I used to be a writer, and the fact that it took her 10 years to get this written and published gives me heart. Anyway, it's the story of Achilles, as you can probably tell by the title. It's a retelling of the Iliad from the perspective of, now I might say this wrong, but I've been calling him Perseus. No, it's not even close to that, is it? It's Patroclus. Sorry, I read this a while ago. So it's from his point of view, and it's all about his relationship with Achilles. Patroclus was a minor prince. He was sent into exile to where Achilles' father was ruling, and then the two of them became friends, and then their lives get kind of intertwined and tangled up. This is not a perfect book, but I still gave it 5 stars because I just adored it and it swept me up and took me away, which is how I rate my books. I think it does gloss over Achilles' character flaws quite badly, and also when they are in the Battle of Troy, it glosses over all the violence and things, so that's not great. But I think kind of the point of it is that it's from this point of view of someone who's so totally in love with Achilles and sees him as this perfect person, and actually I think in real life a lot of us can be guilty of that, of kind of glossing over the flaws of the people that we're in love with. So I would highly recommend this. The writing's beautiful. It's an interesting perspective. It's one that I hadn't read before and I just really enjoyed it. Okay, we're gonna try and go through the others a bit quicker. I'll try and stop rambling. Right, next. That's gone on the bed. Right, okay, so my brother is a PhD student. He's a couple of years younger than me, and he always buys me books for Christmas, and it's always really good because he buys me things that I probably wouldn't pick up on my own. Our reading taste is quite different. I occasionally buy him books and usually he looks at me sideways, but I try. His taste is very literary fiction. It's quite highbrow. He usually buys me things that he knows will challenge me, which is a good thing, and he bought me 3 books this Christmas, all of which are in this haul because I've just been on a roll, and of the 3 books, I loved one, I kind of liked the second one, and then this one, I appreciated what the author was doing, but I hated the protagonist. That book is Solabonz by McCormack. It's won all kinds of awards, as you can see on here. It was longlisted for the Man Booker in 2017. It won the Dublin Literary Award in 2018. It's been really highly acclaimed, really like critically acclaimed. I think for me, it just wasn't for me. It's first person perspective. And it's basically a man, you don't really get his age, but from what happens and the age of his kids and stuff, you kind of assume he's like late 50s, early 60s. And he's sat at his kitchen table just thinking about his life. The whole thing is a stream of consciousness. There are no full stops. That's right. It's like a how long is it? 263 page sentence. Which is pretty cool, and I can see what the author was doing. It's a really good way of kind of showing a stream of consciousness. It takes a little while to get used to that style, although it kind of reads like poetry because of the lack of punctuation. So that was interesting. I think the problem was I just really didn't like the protagonist. I found him really dull and self-centered, and when you're only reading one perspective like that close, because you're literally like this close up to him all the time, and if you don't like that protagonist, that's a problem. So, appreciated what it was doing, understood what it was trying to do, just didn't like the character. Next. Oh, this was a good one. Okay, so The One by John Mars, which is quite difficult to put into a genre. Contemporary dystopian fiction, possibly? Speculative fiction, probably. So, basically, it's set in an alternative England, like contemporary England, where they've found a way to find your perfect match via a DNA swab, and they're matching people that way. And I think it's 4 or 5 years into that technology, and it follows 5 different couples as they get matched. And I found this really interesting. I thought it wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be. I didn't realise it was sort of more of a contemporary speculative fiction. I thought it was going to be set in the future. But it's really clever because it brings up all kinds of questions. Because if you are matching people based on DNA, then that takes away, it changes the way that people are going to get into relationships and how they're going to view them. In this, you've got a couple that are about to get married and decide to get the test done, and it turns out they're not matched. You've got, who else have we got? We've got a girl that gets matched with a guy who lives in Australia, and what that means. There's, who else have we got? I did read this at the start of the month. My favourite one was a guy who's a serial killer, and it's quite violent in places, so there should be a warning for that. Who's a serial killer, and he gets matched with a policewoman. So yeah, I love this. Really fascinating, really well written, great twist at the end for all of the couples actually. It's really, really paced very fast because each chapter is like 2 or 3 pages long. And then you swap to a different perspective. I would say it's a little bit confusing at the start because you don't really get introduced to people before you get dropped into their story. So at first I was a little bit like, oh, who's who and which situation is this? But once you've read a few of everybody's chapters, it's really good. And I would highly recommend it. Next, Best Day Ever by Kaira Rouda. This is a thriller, domestic thriller. So on the back it says, checklist for the best day ever. Drive to the lake house, check. Share romantic dinner, check. Murder wife. So this is, at the beginning, it's a husband and wife, they're going away for the weekend, and they have this, idyllic looking life. They're wealthy, they've got 2 beautiful kids, they've got a nice house, nice car, he's good looking, she's good looking, everything should be perfect. But he, and this is not a spoiler because you obviously know from the back, is a psychopath, and he is basically planning to take his wife to the lake house and kill her over the weekend. This did not go where I thought it was going to, and it was really clever. I really liked it. It's very fast paced, and if you're looking for a good domestic thriller from the perspective of the bad guy, this is a really good one. Right, next. Oh, sorry, I've got them all lined up on the windowsill and it looked like I was about to have a massive fall over. Right, so this, What Would Boudica Do by E. Foley and B. Coates. This was another Christmas present. This is from my cousins. And again, if I'd seen this, I might not have picked it up, but it's really good. It is a series of short essays on women from history and how they coped with problems that modern women would have. So there's 30 different ones, and it's things like Boudica and sticking up for yourself, Mary Wollstonecraft and calling herself a feminist, Mae West and being body positive, Rosa Parks and standing up to bullies, Who else have we got in here that's really well known? Emmeline Pankhurst and Getting Stuck In. Betty Ford and Knowing When to Stop. Catherine the Great and Dealing with Gossip. It's just really good. I read this really fast in a couple of days. They're very short essays. I think the longest one is sort of like 10 pages. So I read it really quick, and I just came away feeling like really empowered, and I learned loads of stuff about all these amazing women through history that I didn't know about. I think it'd be really good for kind of teenagers, but also for older people as well. And this is one that I will definitely be like giving out as presents when my friends' kids get a bit older. It was just really fun, and not just girls. Like, I'm gonna make Charlie read this at some point when he's a bit older. And it was really fun, and yeah, loved it. Right. Oh, next book is one that I had been anticipating for a while, and I actually bought it in hardback, which is unusual for me because I'm a bit tight, but Amazon had a deal on. So that was Vox by Christina Dalcher. Now, this you've probably seen around because loads of people have been talking about it, but it's set in a dystopian America where women are only allowed, is it 150 words a day? 100 words a day. And every woman and girl is given a metal bracelet thing which sits on her wrist, counts the number of words that she uses every day, and if she goes over 100 words she gets an electric shock. Horrific. I have mixed feelings about this book. It's been likened to The Handmaid's Tale, and as we all know, Handmaid's Tale is my favourite book, so I always read those books that are likened to The Handmaid's Tale in the hope that it will match up, and this almost did, but not quite. For me, this was really interesting because it brings up so many questions. A bit like the one, if you change one thing, then it alters. It's like that ripple effect that I find really interesting with dystopian fiction or speculative fiction. And this one throws up so many interesting questions. So we've got our protagonist. She's married. She's got 3 boys and a girl. She's got a teenage boy. She's got two twins who I think are about 11, and then her little girl's 5. And it just throws up so many questions because her daughter has this restriction as well, and her eldest son starts kind of getting really hooked into the society that they're in and starting to believe all the propaganda and everything that he's being told to believe. So I'm just watching people driving in the snow outside my house. Yeah, not good. And it just, if you take away a woman's ability to speak, you basically strip her of everything. So I really like that side of it. It was really interesting. It did explore that well. I think the problem I had is that I just didn't like the protagonist. She was very selfish and I found her quite frustrating. Towards the end she got a bit better. I didn't like the actual ending. I think I gave this a 3 or 4 out of 5. It's worth reading just for the questions that it provokes, but I didn't love it as much as I hoped I would, which was a bit disappointing. Next, after that I needed something a bit lighter, so I went for my reread for this month, for January, which, as you will have seen from that video, I picked myself because it was already January when I posted that video, and that was The Worst Witch by Jill Murphy. This is such a nostalgic book series. Like, before there was Harry Potter, there was The Worst Witch. Anyone who doesn't know, it's the story of Maud. She's at the Witches' Academy, and she's, as it says in the title, she's the worst witch at the school. I mean, it's middle grade, I think. It's 100 pages. The font's massive. It took me about half an hour to read, but for me it was such a nostalgic trip because this, even though this is a different cover and stuff to the one that I had when I was younger, all of the illustrations are the same. There's one, this one where she sat with her friend. So for me it was lovely. I think Charlie's a bit old for these now, unfortunately, but I really enjoyed a little trip down memory lane. Right, next was another book that my brother sent me, which was Everything Under by Daisy Johnson. This I think I can't remember if it's been longlisted for the Costa. I don't know. It's been very kind of hyped and highly regarded and stuff by all the critics. I went into this not knowing much because my brother said not to look it up, and he was right, so I'm not really going to say too much. The basic story is that this is about a mother and daughter. The daughter is grown up now, and her mother and her had a very difficult and quite unusual relationship, and it sort of skips from their current situation to the past when she was small. It is based on a Greek myth, but I'm not going to say which one because that would give away what happens. I enjoyed this. The writing is beautiful. It's a debut novel, which is just like the talent that some people have is ridiculous. It's very slow. It's very character driven. It's really a character study. Not a lot happens until quite far into the book. It is shocking what happens. It's one of those books, like, I read it and I appreciated it, but I didn't enjoy it. It made me very uncomfortable. That's the point of it. And obviously it's good to read stuff that stretches you. I think I gave this a 4 out of 5. So if you're looking for something slow, there's a lot of like descriptions of nature and all that kind of thing. So if that's your bag, this is a really good one. And it's very pretty. Can we just admire that cover? It's, yes, very nice looking, but it wasn't quite for me. But yeah, it was a 3 or 4 out of 5. Okay, I then read my classic for this month, which I was really disappointed by, and that's Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Sorry, there's dust flying everywhere because I clearly need to clean my room. This has been on my TBR for a while. I've seen a few people talk about it. My friend Kath's got a booktube channel which I will link below. I think she's Kath Reads, but I'll link her, or Kath and her books, I can't remember. She read this last year. Her and I have got very similar taste in books, and she raved about it. It's like one of her favourite books. So I added it to my list. I think I also saw maybe Harriet Rosie talk about it, and say that she'd enjoyed it. Was it her? I can't. My memory's terrible. So I put it on my TBR for my classics list for this year, and I had really high hopes. And actually, I didn't really like it. For those of you that don't know, we follow our protagonist. She meets an older man and marries him, and then moves into his house, and basically becomes kind of obsessed with his first wife, Rebecca. This was not at all what I was expecting. I thought it was going to be like a creepy, thrillery, gothic-y ghost story type thing, and it isn't. One of the main problems I have with it is like there's no setting. So we don't know when it's set, we're not given a year, and I'm the kind of reader that likes to imagine where my characters are and ground them. Our protagonist also doesn't give us her first name, which really bugs me. And a couple of times it's mentioned that she's got such an unusual first name, and I was like, what is it? Help me, because like, for me that helps me form the character in my head. It also dragged a bit for me. I thought the pacing was off. The ending I also really didn't like because I didn't think it was very satisfying. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I read it. I probably won't read it again. This is a very nice edition though, and pleasingly it matches my copy of The Woman in Black as well. I really like these editions. But yeah, for me it was just a little bit disappointing. Yeah. Right, next was another book that I'd been anticipating for quite a while, and that I also bought in hardback when Amazon were having their sale, and that is XX by Angela Chadwick. So this has been all over the place, so I'm sure you know what this is about, but it's basically set, again it's speculative fiction set in the UK, in the south of England, and basically the technology for 2 women to have a baby without a man has happened. They can only have a female baby, and it's about a couple that are the first couple to go through this process. And I really like this. This wasn't what I was expecting, but actually I really enjoyed it anyway. So again, for some reason I was expecting it to be like more dystopian, but it's not. It's totally contemporary. And actually what they call ovum to ovum technology is kind of a in the background. It's mostly just about this couple having a baby and how the woman who's not pregnant feels about that and what she goes through. And I just thought it was a really interesting look at motherhood and what it means to be a mother. It also does throw up those more questions about if you have this technology but only female babies can be made for it, will that affect the kind of balance between male and female babies and the population, and they suffer horrendous abuse and hate and all the kinds of things that unfortunately you'd probably expect if that happened, sadly. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I really liked the main character whose perspective we get, and how she kind of talks very honestly about how she feels about the whole thing. And yeah, there was one question left unanswered at the end, which I found a little bit frustrating. But overall, I really enjoyed this, and I would very much recommend it. And again, it's a really nice cover. There's been some really good ones lately. Right, I've got 3 left, so we're almost there. We're in 20 minutes, not too bad. Right, the last book from my brother was one that I had seen around. Loads of people talked about it, loads of people raved about it, but I have to be honest, I wasn't planning on reading it. But I'm really glad he bought it for me because I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and that was Normal People by Sully Rooney. It won, no it didn't, it was shortlisted for the Costa Book Awards last year, and it's been really hyped, and it's not the usual thing I would read, so I'm glad he bought it. So it's just basically the story of 2 teenagers growing up together and their lives, and how they kind of come in and out of each other's life. They come in and out of relationships with each other, and not a lot happens, which is usually not my bag. It is again a character study of these 2 people, but there was just something about the writing that absolutely hooked me. And yeah, it's quite slow, not a lot happens. Sometimes what the characters choose to do is frustrating, they don't make great decisions, but it's very realistic, it's very real, and I just really enjoyed it. So yeah, I would recommend this. It's also quite a quick read, and I liked it a lot more than I thought, so that was good. I'm making such a mess on the bed behind me. Alright, 2 more books. So first one was The Last One by Alexandra Oliva. I'd seen a few people talk about it. I'd seen a few people give mixed reviews of this, so I was a little bit unsure going in, but I decided to go ahead and read it anyway, and I'm really glad I did. For me, this was a 5-star read. So it's basically set in America. We're not given a time period, but it's from things that the characters mention, it's contemporary America. And then there's a set of 12 contestants that enter a TV show called Into the Woods. And it's basically a survival show, and they're told that they will be challenged, that it will be mentally and physically dangerous and draining, and basically the challenges will continue until there's only 1 player left. And the only way for them to get out is that there's like a safety phrase they have to say, and the producers will just keep challenging everybody until everyone has like given up and said they can't do it anymore, and there's $1 million prize for the winner, the last one standing. So we follow each of the contestants excuse me, is given a nickname based on what they do for work, and so we follow Zoo, who works in a zoo, or as a no, I think she does work in a zoo or something like that. Anyway, she works with animals, so she's given the nickname Zoo. We follow her perspective, and it jumps from the start of the games, and then so every other chapter, 1 chapter is the start of the game, so you see all the characters and them going through the first set of challenges, which are like group challenges and stuff, and then it skips forward. We're not quite sure how long, but it's several weeks, and Zoo is alone on a solo challenge, and it's really difficult to explain without giving it away, but very quickly you realise that something, well, it's in the first pages, that something's gone badly wrong, and you don't know if Zoo, and she doesn't know, if she's still in the game, or if something's gone so wrong that the game is over but she's been left behind. I can't really say any more than that. I adored this. I thought it was brilliant. It played with my head so much. I couldn't work out, even up until like the last sort of 30 pages, what was going on. The writing's really good. I really liked Zoo, and I would highly recommend this. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, it was good. And then the last book that I read, my 13th book of the month, oh, honestly, I need to clean my windowsills, right, was Lullaby by Leila Slimani. I've seen this around. I think I added it to my TBR because possibly Harriet Rosie. I've just watched a massive bit of dust float past the camera. Terrible. I think Harriet Rosie talked about it. Somebody talked about it, and I was like, looks interesting. Actually, it might have been Nicole from Beautiful Chaos of Books. I'll link her below. Anyway, so I saw this and thought, yeah, okay, looks interesting. On the front, it's got a really lovely cover to start with, but it says, "The baby is dead, it only took a few seconds." So it's a domestic thriller, kind of, set in France. It's a translated fiction. I don't read a lot of translated fiction, but actually the translation on this was amazing. I didn't even notice. Tells the story of Miriam and I think it's Paul is the dad, who have 2 small children. They've got a little girl who's 2 or 3 and a little 1-year-old boy, and they hire Louise to be the nanny. and you know at the start of the book that the children are both dead, and it looks like Louise has killed them. This for me, I gave this 3 stars in the end. I finished it yesterday. This started out really strong, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a 5-star book because it was really tightly paced. You're very close up to the characters. I really like the writing. The writing's beautiful. But then it kind of lost its way in the middle, and by the end, like, the ending was not good. And I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, I think, in the end. Maybe a 2. No, it was 3. I very rarely give a 2 because I feel like that's a bit mean. Yeah, so for me, this started out really strong, but just lost its way. So it was a bit disappointing. So those are all the books that I read in January. I've had a really good reading month. I don't think that will keep up all year, but we'll see how we go. The other thing I need to do is to pull out my 2 possible options for my reread. So what I've done is I've put them in my cat mug. Charlie bought me this last year or the year before, and it's just the cutest thing, but it's actually almost impossible to drink out of because the ears get in the way. So I use it for like ornamental purposes. So I've put my books in on bits of paper in here. I will link my reread TBR video below. What I'm going to do now is pick out 2 from here. I will then post on my Bookstagram account. I'll put a poll straight after I put this video up so that you guys can pick me my reread for February, which is very exciting. Okay, so just take 2 out at random. Okay, so it will either be The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton, which is exciting, or The Borrowers by Mary Norton, so 2 quite different ones. So like I said, I will put my links below as always, so if you can go over to my Bookstagram account, have a little look at the poll and help me choose what I'm going to have for February. And I will see you guys next week for my TBR for the Thriller-a-thon, which I'm really excited about because it's my first time joining in a readathon. So I hope you're having a good day, and I will see you next time. Thanks guys, bye!